back to the Adoption Squad. I'm your host, Mary. Annie will be joining us on our next episode. I recently had the opportunity to speak with Yael Adler, author of From Gypsy to Jersey, a story that chronicles how her parents came to adopt her from Romania, how she followed the trail back to her birth mother, made the journey back to Romania to connect with her family and her roots. Here is our conversation. So, Yael, first of all, thank you so much for meeting with me today. Um, First of all, tell everyone a little bit about your adoption story.
Sure. Well, thank you first off for having me today. I'm really happy to be a part of this and share a little bit about myself and my story. So I was adopted at the age of 2 from a small village outside of Arad, Romania in 1991. What's kind of interesting is that the timing of my adoption, which I learned later on, was actually really significant to my story, being that it was right after the collapse of communism there. And the reason why that's so vital is because that time, the country was being run by dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, and one of his major initiatives was to increase the birth rate and overall population so that there could basically be more communist people in Romania so that they would be more powerful. And, what he did was he banned all contraceptives, making abortion illegal. And Romania being incredibly poor, what was happening was that women were getting pregnant left and right with no resources whatsoever to support them. So women were kind of in this really difficult position at that time. And they were going to all sorts of extremes. They were trying to self-abort. They were dropping their kids off at the local orphanages, or in some cases, they were just abandoning them. And so what's kind of unique to my story is that, my birth mother could have gone down any of those avenues, but instead, she really chose to give me a better life, and she pursued a private adoption. And I think just feeling that gratitude of just having such a wonderful life now compared to what I could have had is really, what drove me to kind of want to share my story and, write a book, which we'll talk about.
Wow. That's such an interesting background. And so from there, you said you were adopted at age 2. So where were you during those 2 years?
So that's a great question. So I was actually living at home with my birth mother, which was kind of another unique circumstance. What happened was that she gave birth to me, and she didn't have the support of a husband or anything. And she really tried to make it work for those 2 years, but it was incredibly difficult given the just the circumstances, the lack of resources. I mean, we were living in a one room house with no running water, and, the conditions weren't really appropriate to have a child and raise a child. And life was just getting incredibly harder for her day by day. So while she made the efforts to raise me on her own, she really reached the conclusion that I could have a better life if she were to put me up for adoption.
Do you know the steps that she took in order to make that happen, and who she reached out to?
Well, so I guess that kind of goes into a little bit about, the research that I did, once I wanted to learn a little bit more about my adoption. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Basically, when I turned 30, I kind of told myself, this is going to be the year that I look into my adoption a little bit further, and I get these answers. I've always wanted to write a book. But I really just didn't have all of the facts and information, and I didn't really carve out the time to do it. But, when I turned 30, I said, this is a milestone birthday. This is going to be the year that I really write my book, and I dig into my past a little bit more and my adoption. And so what I did was I was cleaning out my mother's co-op, helping her to put it up for sale. And what happened was I came across this binder and I was like, what the heck is this? So I open it and, I find all of these documents inside. I find a video inside, some photos, and I quickly realized that, all of these things are all related to my adoption, and I had never seen it before. So it was kind of like this crazy, buried treasure that I came across. Imagine kind of looking through this random binder that you come across, and it's like telling the story of your life that you know nothing about. And it just kind of like further fueled my desire to get answers and, really look into things more. There was things in there like the court document, medical records, the name of my birth mother, so many things that I was able to uncover just from that. So what I did from there was I asked my mother, what was the name of the attorney who handled my adoption 28 years ago? And she gave me the name, and I said, all right, well, it might be a long shot, but, it's a place to start. So what I did was I went online and I Googled his name, and fortunately for me, he made himself incredibly accessible online, and I was able to track down his email address. So I wrote him an email, and, I wasn't really expecting a response, but I figured, why not? Let's give it a try. And he actually responded only a few hours later. So it was incredibly exciting. And I knew from that point on that I would be able to really piece together so much of my adoption that I never knew about. So he was the one who really opened all these doors for me and, connected me to different people to kind of really uncover all the pieces to my adoption and, give me all the background information of, what adoptions were like in Romania back then and what the process was like and all of the people involved. And, that was able to turn into me conducting a birth family search and taking a trip back there.
Oh, wow. Was your adoptive family, were they okay with you being so curious and going through with this search?
Growing up, I always knew about my adoption, which is something that I'm very grateful for because that's not the case for all adoptees, as some, find out later in life, which can make it more difficult to process. But my parents were always really open about it in our house. And, they would read children books to me and they would talk about it and just try to make it always a safe subject. But I think at the same time, for my mother, it was always a very emotional subject. And to this day, that is still very much the case. I think it brings back a lot of, painful memories for her. With my parents, they tried for many years to conceive and they were unable to do so. They experienced a failed adoption prior to mine. And there was just so much that transpired before they were led to me and before we became a family. And I think that just all kind of surfaces whenever, the topic of adoption comes up. And I think also there's that feeling of rejection in some sense that, adopted parents feel. And I think, approaching that conversation with your parents is not an easy thing. So it was definitely difficult for me to do that. But at the same time, I do feel like she was supportive. And I think that it's a really important component to have that level of support and be able to have the conversation with your parents that you are interested in, just wanting to learn more about where you came from and just wanting to connect with your roots. And I think that's a very healthy thing. And the more support that somebody can get through the process, the better.
Excellent. So you said that you made your way back to Romania. What did you find out from there?
Oh, what did I find out from there? So much. Yeah, that's such a loaded question. I don't even know how to go about answering that one. Well, I learned that I have a sister who actually came from a different biological father, but we share the same birth mom, and she's actually only 3 years older than me. So I got to meet her along with my birth mother and the entire family. It was a really special experience. I was really overwhelmed by the level of just love and how welcoming they all were, and learning about, their culture, because, another big piece to my adoption is that I learned that I was born into the Roma or Gypsy community. And I mean, it was unique enough to learn that I was born in a foreign country like Romania, but even more so, to learn that I was part of this culturally different group was even more eye-opening. So I got to learn about that culture, and I got to meet all of my birth family, and it was such an amazing experience. And that too is part of why I really want to just share that with other adoptees and the community.
So obviously from there you have written a book. So I don't want to dive too far into your story because I don't want to give too much away. But when did you actually decide to start writing?
Yeah, so my book, which is called From Gypsy to Jersey, um, it really started, when I hit my 30th birthday. Going back to that, I knew bits and pieces long before then about my adoption, but the story was always very generic, and that always kind of satisfied me all those years growing up, because I never really had that strong interest to pursue it further. But I think just being in that kind of state of reflection that milestone birthdays tend to put you in, when I hit 30, and then of course coming across that all of those documents relating to my adoption, it was almost like, the universe telling me, like, Yael, you have to write your book this year. You have to make it happen. So that's what I did. I started right after I reached out to that attorney who handled my adoption. And, we had some interviews, which went really well. And he was just so helpful and supportive of my book, and offered so much help and guidance for me, and introduced me to other people who were really a big part of the book. And that's kind of how it began.
And you are currently, excuse me, currently in New Jersey with your family. And the release of this book, are they supportive as well? Do they know everything about your story? Are there things that maybe they didn't know about you before? Was it a revelation piece for them?
For who? I'm sorry, just to
I'm sorry,
clarify.
for your family in New Jersey.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. I think, it was the first time that I was learning, so many things. So it was certainly, all new to them as well. And, the level of support that I received from, my husband and my mother and my in-laws and my whole family and friends, everyone was just incredibly supportive. And, I think in general, this book, it's really meant for everyone. I think, originally it was meant for those in the adoption community, or for people who have some connection to adoption, but really it's so much more than just adoption. It's, about my personal journey. It's about connecting to one's roots, which I think is a pretty universal interest, to want to know where you came from. And, most of all, it's really about having an appreciation for your life. Having gone through this experience, and just seeing firsthand how drastically different my life could have been, has been really eye-opening. And it's just made me appreciate more of the basic things in life that we often take for granted.
So would you write another book if you had the opportunity? Is there going to be a part two, or do you feel as though you have um, most of the pieces of your story? Could there be a part two?
There could be, I kind of left it with the birth family. I extended an invitation to them to actually visit me in the States, which I think would be something really special. As fulfilling as the experience was for me going there and seeing what their life was like, I kind of came back feeling like, it wasn't 100% complete, and that in order for everything to be full circle and to really also have them see my life here, which I think would be so rewarding for my birth mother, too, to really see the life that she, gave me in a sense, by making that choice to put me up for adoption, and just seeing my wonderful life here, and everything that I have access to. And that to me would be really rewarding. So that could potentially be a part two. My birth family coming to the States and visiting me here. Of course, with COVID and all of that happening, that put a halt to some of those plans and arrangements. But we're definitely open to that possibility one day in the future.
So what's next for you?
Well, I have been able to communicate with my sister Monica pretty much on a regular basis, which is really special. We both grew up thinking that we were only children, and all of these years and all of this time, we had a sibling somewhere out there in the world, which is still so crazy to wrap my head around. So I really enjoy speaking with her through Facebook Messenger. We use Google Translate because we obviously don't speak the same language. But we're able to communicate, and it's just, she's made it like so clear that she just wants to be connected to me and my life in some way. And that means a lot. And she actually just sent me a package last night. It was so funny. It was my first package from Romania. And I was so excited. And she was just sending things for me, for my kids, for the baby to be. And it just showed, that level of love and that level of wanting to be a part of my life. And that really just meant so much to me.
It's such a great story. And do you communicate often?
Yeah, we pretty much communicate almost on a regular basis, almost daily. And I'm fortunate enough where she can actually read and write, so we're able to communicate, whereas my birth mother, she is unable to read or write, because education was just not something that women really had access to in the Roma community, especially when she was growing up. So Monica, on the other hand, she went to school until about grade 4. So she had some level of education, but not the extensive amount that we would receive here, obviously. So I'm grateful that she can at least communicate with me to some extent. And, from time to time, if there's a relative who can speak English, we'll all kind of get on a group chat, and that relative will translate, which is really cool. And we'll all have a chance to kind of just talk to each other and see each other. And, it's a really, really nice thing.
I'm certainly hoping in this year that we get to the point where people can actually fly overseas and visit each other in person. But that's so nice that you can, have something like a virtual meetup with them. So at this point, I'm hoping that I can get a hold of this book as well. Can you tell us where to find you?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, of course, I hope listeners will, of course, read my book. But more importantly, share feedback with me. I'd love to hear about your journey, your experiences, and I'd love to just connect with you and be supportive in any way that I can, having gone through the birth search and reunion process. You can get more information on my book and where to purchase it on www.fromgypsytojersey.com. I'm on Amazon right now, barnesandnoble.com, Goodreads, just to name a few. And I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. And of course, we have also listed your book on our website as well at theadoptionsquad.com. It has been a pleasure speaking with you today. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just think that, while all our stories and experiences are different as adoptees, I think, one thing that kind of unites us all is just this curiosity to explore our past. And, it hits everyone at different times in their lives. And, getting answers and filling in those missing pieces for me, it's just been a really fulfilling experience. So I think if you're at that point in your life where you're open to getting answers, I would just recommend that, you take that step. And while nobody can guarantee a happy ending or, the answers that you want per se, there's just something about getting those answers that's really gratifying. And I hope that everyone is able to do that. So thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Yael, for the great conversation and for sharing your story with us and our listeners. Please be sure to check out fromgypsytojersey.com for more information about how to get your copy of Yael's book. And if you would like to share your adoption story, please write to the Adoption Squad at gmail.com. Feel free to remain anonymous if you wish. You can also visit our website, theadoptionsquad.com, to connect with our social media pages and our YouTube channel. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and review to help us grow. And until next time, word to your mothers and to your fathers.